The book talks about a fifth process of Latin American liberation going on at the moment, and also stresses the need to protect the environment. A human intervention is necessary, it is said in the book, if we are to avert apocalypse, if we are to avert the catastrophe. Then Whittle, from your point of view, your perception as an environmentalist, we are happy to hear what you have to say. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, Juan. It's a great honor to be here today. I should start by saying my Spanish is not nearly as good, so I'm only partway through the book, but so far so good. Environmental Defense Fund has been working in Cuba for 11 years, collaborating with scientists from Cuba and environmental officials on how to protect ocean ecosystems and biodiversity. Those of you who have been to Cuba know what a rich and beautiful place Cuba is. It's truly spectacular in terms of our region. I'm an attorney, I should say that up front. I work with scientists here in the United States and also with scientists in Cuba. I have run the Southeast Oceans program from North Carolina to Florida, and about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, we decided you cannot protect the fish or the fish habitats in the Southeast U.S. without Cuba doing its part. So I was invited to go to Cuba in December of 2000, and I've been going back ever since. My Cuban friends and colleagues have kept the door wide open to collaboration and scientific partnership. The book talks extensively about President Fidel Castro's speech in 1992 at the Rio Earth Summit. And I don't need to remind people in this room that that speech was given during the economic crisis called the Special Period of Peacetime. And in that speech, President Castro embraced sustainability and environmental protection, warning against depletion of natural resources and biodiversity if we did not act globally to preserve the environment, to save our kind. The book illustrates that the goal of saving the environment to preserve our kind is still a very important goal, and the challenges are growing every day. I should mention at the outset that protecting our environment for humanity's sake is not a political issue. It's an issue driven by science that is clear. If anything, politics simply gets in the way and obscures what science is telling us. Let me start briefly by saying that there's no doubt that climate change is the gravest challenge facing our globe. There's no environmental challenge that has more potential to alter the world that we leave our children forever. Environmental Defense Fund is working to reduce the pollution that causes global warming, locally, nationally, and globally. And I know that this issue is of paramount importance in Cuba, being an island nation that is directly affected by sea level rise and other consequences of climate change. But my expertise is the oceans, is the sea. And so I want to speak for just a couple minutes about the health of the world's oceans, which I consider one of our greatest environmental challenges. The oceans are being emptied of seafood as we speak. Overfishing is the biggest reason, but habitat loss and climate change also affect the health of the oceans. 70% of global fisheries are overexploited or have completely collapsed. 90% of large fish like sharks, swordfish, and tuna have been removed from the oceans. And these top predators are extremely important, especially in Cuba, which is renowned for its coral reef ecosystems. These large predators are especially important to the health of those coral reefs and entire ecosystems. In the U.S., only 25% of our fisheries are sustainable. In Cuba, that number is a bit higher, but if trends continue, those numbers will decline if action is not taken soon. Declining oceans is also bad for people. Over 3 billion people worldwide rely on fish and shellfish as an important source of protein. In the U.S., the typical income of a fisherman is 30% lower than the typical worker because of the state of the oceans. And just over the past few years, almost 100,000 fishing jobs have been lost on the Pacific coast due to declining stocks of salmon. Cuba has, over the last 20 years, been an impressive leader in the region in terms of making sustainability a top policy priority, even while trying to rebuild the economy. I believe that Cuba can be a model in the future if it continues its commitment to the environment. After the Rio summit, the Cuban National Assembly established the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Environment, a cabinet-level ministry dedicated to science and environmental protection, and since then has adopted a number of important and far-reaching environmental laws and policies that are every bit as strong as those in this country and the rest of the region. These laws and policies provide a firm foundation for sustainability. Also, Cuba has, in my opinion, world-class scientists in every sphere, including marine biology and other ocean sciences. For those of you who have been there, you already know that Cuba is the most important place in the region for biodiversity. It serves a critical function in maintaining healthy ecosystems. Cuba has a large number of endemic plant and animal species, over 3,000 endemic plant species known just to Cuba. And of course, some of the most impressive coastal and marine ecosystems, miles and miles and miles of undeveloped keys and coastline. One program I would like to highlight in which Cuba is a leader is in protecting its marine areas through marine parks, marine protected areas. Cuba has the goal of protecting 25% of its insular shelf in some form of park. That's remarkable. In the U.S., we protect less than 1% of our marine habitat. So 25%, and the Cuban government has already protected 9%. The most spectacular place I've ever been to in Cuba is the Gardens of the Queen National Park, 5 hours off the southern coast. It was recently featured on 60 Minutes, Anderson Cooper, and it featured the work of Dr. Fabian Pina, a marine biologist in Cuba, whose science is helping scientists in Florida bring back the Goliath grouper, one of the most majestic fishes in the ocean. Cuba also has a long list of environmental challenges and problems, loss of biodiversity associated with deforestation, soil erosion, water pollution, and sea level rise. Over 1.4 million Cubans live in low-lying coastal areas directly affected by sea level rise. I also would be remiss if I did not mention energy. In 2008, I was participating in an international conference in Matanzas on renewable ocean energy. Cuba was a pioneer in renewable ocean energy in the 1930s when it developed this really innovative plant to capture the difference in temperature between low-lying areas of the seafloor and the sea surface. It's called ocean thermal energy conversion, OTEC, and Cuban scientists and engineers are in the process of bringing that technology back. It's clean and sustainable. Oil and gas in the Gulf of Mexico, we learned from the BP oil disaster that we're connected. The BP oil spill directly threatened Cuban communities and ecosystems. As Cuba has begun drilling, it's critically important that we work together. Our scientists work together, our managers work together. Environmental Defense Fund is working with partners in both countries to make that happen. It's in the interest of both countries to protect our shores, ecosystems, and communities from potential oil. I should also mention that oil and fossil fuels are really just a bridge to what I think everyone considers a cleaner energy future. Cuba, through its energy revolution, has seen advances in energy efficiency, and is also making progress with wind, solar, and other renewable energy sources. So to conclude, I consider in Cuba, but also much more broadly, that the elements of success for a sustainable future come down to the following: good science, good laws and institutions, public awareness and support, money, political will, and international cooperation. I've mentioned science. Cuba has among the best marine scientists certainly in the region, arguably the world. I've mentioned the environmental laws and policies since 1990s. Those are a foundation that should remain and be strengthened in the coming years to make sure that they're up to the challenge that the book talks about. Public awareness and support, it will be critically important that as the economy develops in Cuba and elsewhere, that the public understands and believes in environmental protection and sustainability. The book mentions the importance of social media and environmental education. Those will be critical. Cuban environmental law provides an important role for the public to participate in environmental decision making. Political will. The political will is very strong right now in Cuba to make sustainability an equal partner with economic development. That truly is remarkable. There are not that many models in the world where an economy, a weak economy, has been, where decision makers have made the environment such a priority. So in the future, as revenues come in from new investments, it's critically important not to sacrifice environmental gains for short-term economic profits. And then finally, international cooperation. As I mentioned, the Cuban government and its scientists have kept an open door. The Environmental Defense Fund have a number of important and interesting projects, everything from protecting shark populations in the Gulf of Mexico to working with Dr. Pina on protecting coral reefs in the southern part of the country. I should mention that Dr. Fabian Pina has recently received a Pew Marine Fellowship, a major environmental prize, awarded for the first time to a Cuban. They have only 5 prizes every year, and there is no one more qualified than Dr. Pina to receive that. But we also need to work together on energy, not only in our backyard in the Gulf of Mexico, but on a common clean energy future, and then finally climate change. So the challenges are great. I believe the opportunities are even greater if we overcome the politics, and I truly commend my Cuban colleagues and friends for their commitment to science, sustainability, and collaboration. Thank you.